Good morning. It is 6:18 a.m. on Monday, November 5th, 2018. I am Christiana Ellis and I just got up. This is 5 more minutes. So, yesterday, me and my coworker, who's here, Paul, went into Seoul to do a little bit of sightseeing, and it was a great day trip. We saw some very cool stuff. I took lots of pictures. One of the things that I was initially thinking was a good thing to do for this video would be to show a little slideshow of those pictures, and I still haven't ruled out doing that, but not today, just because I feel like I need to take more time curating which pictures to show, and it might be longer, and so maybe I'll do that this evening. Also, I guess as far as like Flickr used to be the thing, but I don't know if people like Flickr anymore. So like, what, I'm soliciting advice. What is the best way to show like a big album of photos to people? Like, I can select some of my favorites and share them individually, but what's the way to do a whole folder? If you guys have thoughts on that, let me know. But what I'll probably also do is like a video slideshow with commentary, because everybody loves vacation slides, right? Anyway, I might do that separately and not as part of this video. So in the meantime, let's talk about what the trip was. And it was a great time. So we got up relatively early and headed into Seoul. We were saying it was the bullet train. I don't know if like the bullet train is like only counts as a specific train. It's a high-speed train. We saw on the display that we were going 293 kilometers per hour at one point, so it's pretty fast. I didn't get a lot of good pictures from the train because the placement of the sun and the double windows made it very difficult to get pictures of any scenery without reflection of myself. Even putting the camera right up against the window, you'd get a reflection from the second layer. Wasn't great for pictures, but it was a neat journey through the Korean countryside and heading north up into Seoul. And then we got out at Seoul Station, and we had sort of a loose plan that there were a couple of palaces that seemed like they might be interesting, a historical village, a market. And so we kind of decided to head for one of the palaces, do that, and then see what happens from there. Now, on our way to the palace, we discovered an amazing coincidence, which was that just by sheer serendipity, we were there on the day that right in front of that palace, they were having a 2018 Korean Food Culture Festival. And as part of that festival, or related nearby that we walked by, was a Guinness World Record attempt for the most people making kimchi at simultaneously. So how fun that those things were happening just in association. Because when we were walking around the palace, and you'll see this in the pictures, the busy tourist location what consisted of large numbers of people in very fancy costumes, which I suspect were, regional specialty, sort of like, so these are all acts for the culture festival, and but people are in their traditional outfits and walking around taking pictures of the same palace stuff. In fact, they were taking a lot of pictures because they were like wanting pictures of themselves in their fancy outfits, right? So it made for a really interesting trip through that palace. And the palace itself, this was, sorry, I'm looking, Gyeongbokgung Palace, which was the largest palace built by the Joseon dynasty. And the original palace was dated back to like 1395, but as is often the case with these sorts of historical landmarks, this one was destroyed by a fire at one point and then rebuilt. And then there was also, when there was the Japanese colonial presence there, they built a big government building in an ostentatious location right in front of the palace that was there for a long time and only torn down apparently in 1996. So one of the big huge courtyards that we went through used to have a big government building in it that blocked the palace unless you went around behind the government building. And so but the palace, I don't know, I didn't have a very specific expectation in mind, but it was an enormous grounds with lots of buildings, and it was very impressive, and I took tons and tons of pictures. It was very cool. A lot of very traditional architecture, but especially on the inside, the underside of the roofs, there's all of this brightly colored lacquer work on the wooden roofs. It was really beautiful, and there was just a lot of really cool stuff. There was, I mean, you'll have to see the pictures. You'll have to see the pictures. I did buy a couple of souvenirs. One was this mug. Whoops. Now this thing right there was one of the pavilions in that palace grounds. Also, I discovered only after buying this mug, because I liked the artwork on it, that this particular line of mugs is part of a charity thing. Series titled "Palaces from a Unique Perspective" is a line of cultural products made by autistic people, and a portion of the proceeds go towards charities to support people with autism. So that's kind of a nice little bonus, because I picked the mug just because I liked it. I didn't even realize that about it until I got it back to the hotel. Then I also bought this, which is a lantern. It's an LED lantern, and I could turn it on, but then it does this on camera. And there's a couple of different settings. And like this one changes, and I discovered kind of a neat thing as it changes the brightness. The camera's not doing the same thing it was doing earlier. Oh, well, that's all right. Oh, yeah, there we go. When it was sort of the foremost thing in the room, it was there we go. Just as it cycles through, it was doing fun things to the light balance. So it makes it look like this is staying the same, but the light in the room is changing. But in fact, it is this that's changing. It's just the camera keeping up with that. But so that's fun. Also, it's apparently rain resistant. I mean, I don't think I'm going to take it into the shower with me or anything to test that, but that's what the label says. But so when we walked back out of the palace, we were going through this culture festival, and there was a lot of the displays that were not meant, to eat. They were just display of, fancy foods prepared by, different areas, and also like equipment, restaurant cooking equipment and stuff like that. And there were a couple places where you could get food, though, and we were cheerfully told, free for foreigners. And we got we tried some soup from a really neat big soup display with a little crab like peeking out over the side, and they took our picture while we were eating it. I don't have that picture, but it was just like they thought it was interesting having obvious foreigners try their soup, I think. But then when we passed that kimchi thing for the first time, it was still setting up, but then it was going when we walked back the other way. and that was exciting too. So I got pictures of that, and the end of our and then we also walked through a little bit of a market where it's just sort of like this busy kind of bazaar with just shops and crowds spilling out all over, and it's just about anything you could think of to buy, and there's several blocks worth of it. I got a few pictures of that too, but we're definitely gonna see more of that on another trip, I think. The end of our trip was probably the low point in some ways, because when we were on our way back to the train, we didn't anticipate that the crowds at the train station and on the trains would be much, much heavier in the evening than when we came in the morning, to the point where the original train that we wanted to catch was sold out, and then the next one was standing room only. So after walking around on our feet all day, we also had to take a later train where there's nowhere to sit in the train station because so many other people waiting, and then stand on the train. So we were pretty sore by the end of that. That wasn't our favorite. And then to boot, the cab we tried to take from the train station, there was a language barrier. But I think the frustrating part of that was I feel like we gave that driver enough clues that he should have been able to get it. Like, we had the hotel key with the name on it, and it had the address printed on it. And we showed him on a map where it was. And I don't know why none of those things were enough for him to be able to take us to that hotel that was only a 5-minute drive away. I'm not sure what the problem was, but oops. Once again, my computer. So in any event, that was not the best part of the trip, but overall the trip was great. And yeah, so it was a great time, and I'll be putting together some curation of the photos a bit later, and I might post a few of them as well individually. And so in the meantime, I will talk to you all tomorrow for 5 more minutes.